Trust your gut. We hear it all the time, don't we? How many of us actually practice it? Not many, and a lot of us don't do it well. Why is this? Well, it comes from an oppressive power structure that is prevalent in our capitalistic and patriarchal society. Today I'm going to give you a few tips and ideas of how you can tap into trusting your gut, developing that intuition, and the benefits that come from it. I'm also going to show you how to make refrigerator bread. Welcome to Misfit Grit. All right, so we are in the middle of a kitchen painting project here. So my kitchen is utterly disheveled. There is stuff everywhere. I don't have a globe on my light yet, so the light's wonky. I gotta clean up after supper, but I needed to get this bread started so that there's bread for the weekend. I'm filming this on a Friday, and I thought I'd show you, and I have a few minutes because a couple of my kids were taking ice skating this evening, and the little kids are watching cartoons in the living room, so you're gonna hear some of that chatter as well. So refrigerator bread, we're gonna get to first, and while that's mixing up, then we'll talk more about trusting your gut. But I had said before that I'll show you how to make this because this is the easiest bread you'll ever make, and you'll never actually want to make any bread again because it's not needed. I get complimented on this bread all the time. This is the only bread that I basically make because I'm a busy mom of 5. I got a lot going on. I run a small farm. I homeschool these kids, and I don't have time to be kneading bread every day, every other day. So I make refrigerator bread. So refrigerator bread is really easy, and I make mine with a combination of yeast and sourdough. So we start with a tablespoon of active dry yeast. We put that in our lukewarm water. Stir that up. And then we're going to add 4 cups of all-purpose flour, as well as 2 cups of whole wheat. And you could try other grains as well. I'm going to start experimenting with other grains here soon, but this is just sort of your basic refrigerator bread. This will make 2 loaves. I throw in about half a cup of wheat germ, a tablespoon and a half of salt. Getting low on my salt, gotta refill. There we go. And then I give a really good, healthy splop, as we say, of sourdough. That's about a cup, almost a cup. And then you have to remember to refill your sourdough so that it's ready to go the next time. That's it. That's all you put in it. Super duper easy. Super easy. You gotta do this. And the next step is you take all that, you got your ingredients. I hook it up to my KitchenAid. You could do this by hand and just stir if you don't have a KitchenAid. Although, oh my gosh, if you don't, they are your best friend ever. Hook that on with your bread hook. Got your yeast going, 2 cups of water to start out with, and then we'll add up to a third if needed. If you're not using sourdough, you would use 2 tablespoons of yeast, and you would use a little bit more water. But because I'm using sourdough, it tends to add a bit more water. So I always have another cup ready to go and just kind of see what the consistency needs to be. Get that on in there. Lock her down. Here we go. just let that bad lady do her thing for about 5 minutes, maybe 10, depending on the speed. It can go a little higher. You can see mine needs a little adjustment. She's wiggling a little much, so I gotta get somebody, my husband or son, they keep meaning to tighten this up for me and then we forget. So I'm just gonna let her run, do her thing, and we'll go chit-chat about why you should be trusting your gut and what it means when you can. Okay, so the bread will, then once it's done mixing, you would cover it in plastic wrap with a string around it, put a towel over it, and let it sit out for 2 hours. After 2 hours, you put that in the refrigerator for a minimum of 4 hours. And then you can start baking with it. You can pull off a chunk as needed. Maybe you're just 1 or 2 people and you just want a small loaf of bread. You can pull off what you need, let it rise for 1 hour, and then you bake it at 350 degrees. If it's a smaller loaf, it probably wouldn't take as long. And then you're good to go. I bake it for an hour at 350 degrees. I make 2 regular bread pan loaves. And what I like to do is I cut it in half, my dough. I roll it out, form the loaves, put it into my greased pans. I rise one, bake one that day. I cover the other one in plastic wrap and the towel, put it back in the fridge, and then it's ready to go. And I look like an amazing, Betty Crocker, Martha Stewart, when I can just like pull this loaf of bread out of the fridge and like, oh yeah, bread in a couple hours, haha. So it's so super duper easy. I'll put the ingredients and all that down below, the directions. Really great bread. And you can also make like breadsticks and rolls with it too. You don't have to do the loaf, but it's great. Highly recommend. So let's talk about trusting your gut. This is not something we do well in this country. And it's because there are very strong power structures in place that are relying on you to second guess yourself on everything. Absolutely everything. Especially if you're a woman. And that's because your power has to be taken away and given to, the strong men, the powers that be, so that they can control, right? And they can get resources and they can tell us what to do, whether that be through religion or finances or government or the healthcare system. And it's really, really tough to learn to trust your gut in a society where, especially if you're female, you've been told from a very young age that, no, you're just imagining that. Or no, they didn't mean that. You're just too sensitive. Or no, that person wasn't actually doing that really weird and creepy thing. Don't get them in trouble for it, because we wouldn't want them to be in trouble for doing the really weird and creepy thing, right? The burden falls upon the person with that intuition, with that gut feeling, to brush it aside in order to keep the power structures in power. And this is very problematic because it makes people unwell, it makes us miserable, it creates trauma, and it's, how we have fascism in this country. It's a huge part of what's going on. I am a person who, I trust my gut. I haven't always been great at it, but I've never really given a fuck what anybody thinks about me. I'm not saying I haven't had my fair share of codependencies. I definitely have. I've struggled with mental health issues myself, so I'm not saying I do this perfect all the time, but kind of as a general rule, I'm somebody that's like, yeah, I'm not going to do that system. This is a channel where I talk to you about how I have disengaged from systems, how I get out of oppressive situations, and hopefully to inspire you. And you can retrofit that however that looks for your life. And we can have some more free thinkers going on in this society because, right, we need that. We definitely need that. So I see a lot of people struggling with trusting their intuition, their gut, who are people pleasers. Again, women are primed for this. We're taught to bend over backwards for everybody around us, particularly if they're a man, and to be seen as pleasing and pleasant and smiling and doing for others all the time. And it's stronger in certain cultures than others, but it's incredibly toxic. And it's why women suffer with autoimmune issues more. And we have a lot of problems that men don't really have to fool with because men can just kind of pass that pain on to women and be like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. You're going to have to suffer it. That's a whole other topic that I'll get into at another time. But people who are people pleasers, my heart really goes out to them consistently, because I can actually, by trusting my gut, I can sense how much they're struggling, how desperate they are for the attention and the approval of others to their own detriment, maybe to the detriment of their families and the people around them. And they really tie themselves up into knots. They pass on a lot of generational trauma, get involved in some very problematic things because they're just trying to be accepted and loved. And if you're someone that identifies with that description, I want to send to you the biggest amount of acceptance that it's okay that you feel that way. There's a reason that you do. It's a safety in your body to try to find somebody to tell you that you're good, that you're going to be safe. But it's not necessary, because the people who are going to depend on you to behave a certain way to please them, those aren't really the people that you want to spend time with. And it might be lonely to get rid of some of those other folks in your life. But if you can liberate yourself and learn to trust your intuition onto what's healthy for you, what's safe, where is success, what is your path, what is your calling, what feeds your soul, how can you show up in the world in a way that helps others and not hurts others, there is so much more satisfaction in that. And I really believe that that is why so many people are struggling, is because there is such an utter lack of intuition with folks in our society. Now, some of us are born with stronger types of intuition than others. I do recognize that, but it's also a skill and a muscle that we develop. And I have a very high level of certain types of intuition, and it is something that I am very interested in developing more, because as I've started to pay attention to it over the last few years, as I've really gotten through a lot of trauma work, and I've been like, oh yeah, I'm just fine the way I am. I'm totally great, and I'm going to accept that and approve, and I'm a great human being, and I'm going to show up in the world with it, and I'm going to trust my gut. Things have gone much better, and the problems that I've had recently, a lot of is when I didn't trust my gut. I'll give you one example of what's going on in my life right now, and today I was so pleased that I had trusted my gut, and this has made a very difficult and trying experience much better for me. So the last 3 months, I have been struggling with what appears to be rheumatoid arthritis. It came on explosively, was the term that the rheumatologist used today, because I was able to see a rheumatologist today, kind of last minute. There was a cancellation, so I got to see one virtually. She lives in, I believe, North Carolina, and I live in the northernmost part of Michigan's Upper Peninsula. There's no rheumatology around here, and I was able to see one last minute, and it was great. So anyways, I've been struggling with this issue for 3 months. Came on very suddenly, extraordinarily strong, crippled me up at times, and I don't use that term lightly. Wasn't able to raise my arms. It's been in my elbows and my shoulders primarily, and it was very, very bad. And if you struggle with joint issues, castor oil packs. Use castor oil packs, look them up. That is a miracle. So I'd been struggling, trying to get in with a rheumatologist, trying to get a primary care doctor to pay attention to me. I hadn't seen a doctor in 4 years because I am a healer. I treat things at home. I birth at home. I give myself prenatal care because the medical system up here won't fool with me because I home birth. And a lot of people would just get really down and out, or maybe they would completely cave and go straight to the medical system and say, hit me with everything you got. All right. And I get it. Like, if you aren't familiar with the healing modalities that I am, that's where you're going to go, right? You're going to look for help. And I totally get that. But I didn't. I trusted my gut and I started my research. I pulled up my books because I have a lot of different books, and I knew nothing about arthritis. I'm 39 years old. I had not dealt with this. I'm quite healthy. And I started researching, and I picked up on it really quick that this is rheumatoid arthritis. So when I went in to see the rheumatologist today, she's going through the list of questions. You have this problem, that problem, to go to see what kind of medications I could be put on. She told me that I was probably the healthiest person she's ever seen as a patient. And I said, well, yes, thank you. I am quite healthy. Very proud. That's because I trust my gut, right? I have followed learning natural medicines and healings for many years. This took me a long time. I heal my family. I keep my kids very, very healthy. I'm extraordinarily proud of this, but it's because I trust my gut. I don't listen to people who tell me that that's just old wives' tales, or those herbs don't work, or, silly things like spices and food can't heal anyone. No. I know that it works. And in fact, I can even tell now if I'm having a flare up in my joints, because rheumatoid arthritis is an autoimmune issue. So if I'm having a flare, if I just look at a tomato product, or if I think about drinking a beer, my body tells me, nope, don't touch it. That's going to make it worse. And that's something where 4 months ago I'd have been like, yeah, I can have a beer and eat a bunch of tomato sauce. That'd be fine. But now I'm listening to my body, and I can pay attention to what would help this condition and what wouldn't. So when I went in and we're going over everything, and she says, yeah, it sounds like you have developed an arthritic condition, and there's some more testing to definitively determine if it is RA, rheumatoid arthritis. But, come on, they're like, probably. So when she told me this, I was like, yeah, I know. And she commented on how well I took the news and how I must have done my research and I must know what I'm dealing with and talking about, where some of her patients come in and they're so out of touch with their own bodies, their own day-to-day experience, that it takes them a whole appointment just to intake the fact of the diagnosis, and then they have to come back to a whole other appointment just to get the treatment. But I was ready. I had trusted my gut, and I said, something is very, very wrong. I am developing a very horrible condition. I can feel it. I know it. This is not just a coincidence. Something is wrong. And I took it serious, and I started researching and trusting my gut, and it worked. So by the time I ended the appointment, I walked out. I have a immunomodulator medication that I'm starting slowly. I don't take any medications. This is all new to me, but I am willing to work with the pharmaceuticals, because if you don't treat RA aggressively in the beginning, it becomes a crippling and terrible disease. And many of us have seen elders who were not as fortunate to receive treatments when they were younger, and the treatments weren't as good, and they do become crooked up and crippled, and that is not a future that I wish. So I am going to work with the pharmaceuticals. We're going to see what's going on, as well as doing my castor oil packs and taking tons of turmeric and lots of ginger and olive oil and all the things that I have found that help. And I tell you this because I really want to invite you to tap into what you know that your body needs, your spirit, your soul, those around you whom you care for. And just because the system exists does not mean it's in your best interest. Now, we can't always disengage completely. Do I want to be on pharmaceuticals? Absolutely not. I was really proud that I wasn't on any. Oh well, that's the way the cookie crumbles. I got to deal with what I got to do. And we can't always do it perfect at the time, and don't be stubborn and hurt others, because that's not actually trusting your gut, right? That's getting rigid and stubborn and controlling and wishing things weren't the way they were. We got to deal with reality, and we got to move like the water with it and go with the flow and do the very best that we can in the systems that we're stuck in. And I hope that you can take something from this. I invite you to think about it. And I also invite you to try this refrigerator bread, because you will make the best sandwiches. I highly recommend cheese and pickle. And if you don't know what a cheese and pickle sandwich is, I mean, come on. What do you live under a rock? It's literally bread, mayonnaise, cheddar, cheese, and a pickle, and more bread. So you got to do that too. My family loves them. Trust your gut, make refrigerator bread, and you're going to get through it. I promise you. That is my message to you. Take care, and we'll talk soon.